This is gonna be really interesting because I've been introducing speakers all week, and I now get to introduce ourselves, which is pretty awesome. So I'll start by introducing Megan. Megan is absolutely one of the freaking smartest people in the events industry. Yeah, come on, yes. And I'm so happy that we get to present. We're gonna be talking about community and how do you turn your event into an online community. And yeah, just to give some like ground rules for us, we are gonna be answering your questions all throughout. So everybody in the virtual audience, everybody here, use the VVox app, ask us questions. Also, Megan and I, we hate PowerPoint. So I'm gonna be live drawing during this entire presentation, and to show you it's live, I'll even give you guys how I'm feeling right now, which is not using that tool, but I'll give you guys a nice big smiley face as well. So we're gonna be having a little bit of fun. But yeah, I think we should just dive on in. And you guys ready for some knowledge bombs?
Woo-hoo. All right.
Well, come on, louder than that. All right, Megan, where should we start?
Okay, so we started putting this presentation together, and I say presentation loosely because we don't have slides or anything. We're having a conversation because for, I don't know, over a decade, this industry has been talking about the Event to 365 model, all hypothetically about why you should do it, but we haven't really gotten into the weeds of like, who's actually responsible for it? Where do you start? How do you start the strategy? Is it after the event, before the event, during the event? What do we do? So we're gonna break it down today. I am blessed to be one of the founding members with Will and the Event Prof community. So we're gonna use that as like our case study today. So we're gonna talk a lot about what's happening there. If you're not a member, consider joining. I got really, really cool experiences inside of there. There's a meetup tonight if you wanna learn more about it. But because of that community, I met someone that's also a director of engagement in South Africa, and we've collaborated on a number of projects. I was on her podcast, she was on my podcast, and I've never actually met her. Never one time. And we've done projects together and we collaborate all the time. And if it weren't for having a community like that or somewhere online that I can meet people, it probably never would have happened. And so that's part of why I'm so passionate about this Event to 365 and digital communities. Because for someone like me, if you guys don't know, I live in a remote part of Montana.
Really remote.
There are 6 event people, like citywide big event producers in my valley, which is Montana speak, right? You're welcome, you can say that. And we all know each other because there's only 6 of us. And so I don't want my career to be limited because I choose to live where I live. And I shouldn't have less access to my peers and my colleagues because of where I choose to live. And so places like the Event Prof community, and there's a number of others that I'm a part of, allow me to continue to have the career I want and yet live more remotely because I can use technology to help me connect with people like my friend in South Africa. So that's why I'm super passionate about this. Will, why do you love the event to community?
Well, I want to jump on what you said. Like, this is following the big trend of remote work that we're all feeling right now, right? Like before the pandemic, like it was like 5% of people remote worked. Now it's like 95%. And so what you're doing is you're hopping on and seeing that this radical trend of remote work is happening. But what you're also seeing is that people are starting to move into more remote locations, I'll say. You know, like
I do have an airport. Let's not say it's like remote and like I live on a cow town, but like I do have an airport 20 minutes from my house.
At least. But like you probably wouldn't have a chapter of MPI or PCMA or something like that there. So this allows you to basically participate and get that same level of connection, but not having to wait for a chapter to be there. And I think that's really where the model that Megan and I see moving, is that people are not going to be in the same places where you have chapters anymore. And if you've ever like been a president of a chapter that has a small group of people, of any association, you know it's extremely hard to keep it sustainable. And that's one reason why like a lot of these associations are struggling, but the big LA hubs, New York hubs, Miami's, those things are doing okay because they're just so large. So the reason why I'm really passionate about it is that, you know, I saw this like larger trend happening over these, like probably the last year or so, and that marketing the way we did it before doesn't work. And if you felt this, that, you know, for years you marketed a certain way, and then all of a sudden this year you're like, why am I not getting as many customers as I used to? You know, an example of this is content marketing. It used to be prior to the pandemic when my company, Endless Events, had to do, you know, promote ourselves. A lot of you probably know me from that content. And it worked really well because people would download the content, a salesperson would follow up with them, and we would get leads and deals straight from that. Now, we put an ebook out, it could be the best ebook ever, and people download it. We call those people, they ignore the calls because on your phone now you can silence all unknown callers, but also people don't want to be sold to the same way because everybody understands the relationship they have with the internet and with content. And because so many people are doing content now, it's also way less valuable. It used to be people download my ebooks and they'd be like, oh my God, this is the best thing. This is the Bible. And I was like, okay, thank you, first of all. But now when they download an ebook, it's probably the 5th or 6th ebook they've downloaded that day. It's not as valuable. So community fills this gap that allows you to create a new marketing communication channel.
I mean, think about how you shop online. So you go to Amazon and you're gonna purchase it. Anybody else like me and read like 4 pages of reviews, the 5 stars, the 1 stars before I make the commitment to buy it? I mean, that's the same concept applied here. I wanna hear from other people, like, why was that event so cool? Why should I pick this company? I wanna hear from other people, and community helps create that marketing avenue.
Totally. And so what I love about it is for events specifically too. This is a place where you can drop polls about what kind of speakers you wanna see. It's where you can have attendees ask questions, and it's not always you answering all the emails. The attendees can answer their own questions. And that's honestly where it gets really, really amazing because then people are starting to build those connections earlier and earlier, so.
Love it. So let's get into the weeds of this. Again, we're going to use the event prof, which someone called the event professor community, which I'm totally stealing and using from now on.
Damn it.
So, Will, when you started thinking about creating an event professional community, why did you want to do it in the first place?
A lot of it had to do with the fact that it actually started off as a Slack group originally. And shouts to Nick Borelli, who was like, hey, there's a lot of planners who have never used Slack before. We should create a Slack group where people can use it and try it out, but also use it as a chance to create a connection with new people that maybe aren't using LinkedIn to communicate with each other or don't attend conferences. So we started basically this massive Slack group, had at its peak was 5,000 members or something nuts like that. And so that was actually the start of it. And then I started getting these inklings of feeling like social media was becoming more cringe. It was starting to not feel as effective as it used to be. But I knew that people still valued the tips and tricks that I shared. So instead of relying on the great algorithm to share that information, I was like, why don't companies create their own communities that then we can communicate and utilize that information from? So basically, it was in response to me feeling like Endless needed this channel as a marketing channel. And what started off as first as being an Endless marketing channel realized that it was much bigger movement. And so what was cool is what started off as that Marcom challenge that we were talking about before, it's now way bigger than that.
Great points. So when you started to build this, move it from Slack channel into an actual self-sustaining community, if you will, where did you start? Did you start with a platform? Did you start with what you wanted a community to be? What was your first start away from Slack and into a platform?
So I think it started as the tech nerd in me was definitely technology first, because I think that was also what I was trying to fix. Slack was a cool idea, but the problem is messages get lost in it. It's just kind of
Anybody use
messy.
Slack for work? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. Anybody use Slack for work?
It gets messy real quick.
And one of my problems was that sometimes I go in the community and I want to look at it on the weekend or answer a message, but then my company Slack is right next to me. And I didn't want to make it where I had to be tempted to look at work. And that's I think very important. And one reason why also social media is hard is that you get on social media, there's just so much noise. So you get distracted easier. And so I think I wanted to make it where it had its own dedicated channel. So I started looking actually at the tech kind of first, but I knew that I wanted to get it off of a Slack onto actually an event platform originally. And so the event platform I used was the idea that all communities should use, if you're gonna create a community for your event, just use the exact same app you use for your event. And they carry a lot of similar features to each other. So I was like, oh, this is gonna make a lot of sense. We actually picked one, we were really happy with it. And that's when the community I think became its own. And because it was on this own channel, it was very uniquely branded, I feel that's really when it started to kind of take its own. But there's probably, I think you're gonna ask me probably about all my challenges I probably had going on to this idea. But my philosophy at that moment, this is in June of last year. So you can just tell you how fast this evolution has happened. I was like, yes, for sure, an event platform is going to equal the community platform, but that definitely proved to be wrong, I think, in a lot of ways.
For sure. So you made a good point about thinking about events in this. So for our friends in the audience watching and here in person, what comes first, the event or the community?
Ooh.
It's the great debate, because for me, when I start thinking about how this concept Event to 365 happens, if you wait till after your event to start planning a strategy to build community, you already lost all the momentum you went into it with. And so you have to be introducing the community, telling people about it while they're already in person. So when they're at your event, instead of saying, oh, when it's over, we'll ask you about a community and do you want to join it, and say, hey, this is already here. You know that great hallway conversation you just had? Now you can take it online, and you have a post-event strategy on how to then migrate all of those attendees into community members. But for me, it has to happen almost simultaneously of the event, because if you wait till after, you've already lost.
Eddie, can you click the my face again on there? Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think actually the smartest idea is to build the community before you do the event, because there's so much communication that happens leading up to the event in anticipation. I find that if you send people towards that community, you're also piggybacking off the hype leading up to the event and the energy. Versus if you do it after the event, you're also like, you're riding on that wave, but now like you really gotta then be on top of the you giving them content and things like that, because that's what they're gonna expect. But if you start leading up to the event, you're gonna get a lot of natural people wanting to help be those first people to help grow it. And the important thing I think to know about community is the difference between that and an audience too, right? So when you talk about like an audience, imagine this is me. An audience.
Oh, that's a great picture of you. Look
thank you, you know, very slimming. An audience is talking to like people over here, right? And it's talking at them, right?
Which we don't want to do today, and you haven't submitted any questions yet. So get in the app,
what the
guys.
heck? Just kidding. But really what community is instead of just this outward, I'm also a very slow drawer too. So we build this awesome audience, and this is what a lot of like content creators are struggling with. They build this awesome audience, but it's just one to many. But what community is this person talking to this person talking back to you, this person talking to you, this person talking to this person. And I'm just gonna be here drawing arrows all day, but I think you're gonna get the idea, right? That they are all talking to each other and contributing. And that's a very important part of building your community, is you need to get it to the point where it's not like just an event where you're serving the audience. They're helping serve each other and create what they're doing. And that's really where it goes from being an event, I think, into a community.
Agreed. And I think you make a great point about starting beforehand. Invite everyone in to start their conversations and meeting people online. I am generally a very introverted person, so networking receptions are like the 7th layer of hell for me, because they're like, walk into a room with a bunch of people you don't know and start conversations. Hard pass, you'll find me in the corner with a glass of champagne, right? It's just not practical. But if I can start those conversations online and reach out to some people or be like, hey, we're both attending this session. What are you excited about? Or I can use the screen as sort of the buffer to start conversations. So then when I walk into the event, I already know someone there. I already have a familiar face because we started having conversations beforehand. I've already been talking to the organizer because they did instead of an email, know before you go, because we know nobody ever reads them, do a live session, invite people in, send them to a breakout room so they're forced to meet a couple people before they get on site. Then maybe you set up a meetup lounge or something where community members can go to find each other. That's an incredible way to start building all of this. And then the hardest part of community building is changing human behavior and asking them not to go to Facebook or not there and go to the community. But if you're ingraining that from the very beginning, before they even step foot in your experiential event, they're much more likely to keep coming back, because now you've asked them to change their behavior and it's second nature to them. They're clicking the app on the phone, they've got it bookmarked on their computer, and so it just becomes intuitive of like, oh, I have a question, let me go into the community. Or, oh, I know I want to see my community member friends, I got to go to that event. And so it actually, a lot of people who are doing community well are seeing uptick in their in-person events because they've cultivated relationships online that they then want to see in person. And so they're more likely to actually show up to your events because they have an invested interest. Maybe they put in a session idea or they met someone that they had to see in person to finish a deal, right? So you're incentivizing them to actually come in person.
Megan mentioned something that's really important. I use this analogy that imagine that you're building your home, right? And you want to renovate your kitchen. If you have an apartment that you rent and pay rent to and you don't actually own it, would you renovate your entire kitchen and put thousands and thousands of dollars to making that the most amazing kitchen ever? No, right? Because you don't own it. You're gonna move out and all that money's gonna go nowhere. But you would do that for the house that you own, right? Because you're building value towards it. So one of the things is a lot of people ask like, well, why don't I just do this in a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group? Well, the problem is you build this gigantic audience on something you do not own. And it's not gonna appreciate over time. You have no control over the data. You have no control over, anything. And I can tell you this from like 3 different times it's happened. All it takes is for a social media to change the algorithm and all that energy that you built goes nowhere. And it sucks.
Because they can't find you anymore.
They can't find you anymore. You're not reaching the feed. So you wanna pick a system that's gonna allow you to have that full control. Is this a good time to talk about platforms and what to look for?
Yeah, so when you're thinking about a platform, do you start with features that are your now needs, or do you pick a platform that's gonna grow as you're growing your community?
Both, but I definitely look at long-term because, I think in a lot of ways when you pick a technology, I mean, like you guys are all here for an event tech conference, so you understand this, you've bought in platforms before. You wanna pick things that you can grow into because the transition between platforms is really, really hard. So something we didn't mention is that when I went from that event platform, I'm now on a dedicated community platform that actually is a little bit less powerful when it comes to events. And I changed my entire philosophy around the idea that the event platform needs to be the community platform. And making that transition to get people to move is like the 7th layer of hell for community management. And if you've ever tried to make people switch technologies, you know how hard it can be.
Anybody ever switch from an Android to an Apple iPhone or vice versa?
Or when they switched you from like Office 365 to Google, right? Like we've all been there before. That's like on the community side, but people aren't as incentivized. When a boss says you have to start using Gmail right now, or hey, I need to switch to iPhone because my partner will break up with me if I have to see any more green bubbles, you're just gonna do it. But on the community, they're gonna say, I'd rather chase the lazy way out. So just make sure that you choose something so you don't have to switch very quickly because going for 1 year and then switching was very, very hard for us. And easy in a lot of ways, which we can talk about. But yeah, I use long-term. I think that's the way to go. However, this is just a general event tech. Don't at all pick your technology based on they say what's gonna come. Don't buy based on the roadmap. I'm sorry, especially if you're an event tech person out here right now, or you're a VP of product. I am just so tired of being—
To everyone in the exhibit hall, please.
Yes, please stop saying, oh yeah, we're gonna do that feature in a year. Because I'm sick of that happening where I'm sitting there a year later and going, well, where's that feature? So I had to learn the hard way that when it came to my community platform, that was one reason why I switched, was I was waiting on these future features that never truly came. So want to quick fire some cool kind of features that are helpful?
Yeah. What's your favorite feature in the event prof community?
Oh, favorite feature, hands down, that I was like must have for any community platform, push notifications. So like a lot of platforms a lot of like apps will be like web-based where it's on your browser, you log into maybe like, eventprofscommunity.com. You can do that. But I wanted the ability to have a native app on my phone that when someone commented on something, it showed up on their lock screen of their phone. Because like we're in this day and age where like email notifications aren't enough. And I don't think—
Email is messy.
Email's messy, and now we're getting notifications in text, like spam in text.
Oh my God, if the Red Cross sent me one more text message about donating blood, I'm gonna go.
If they ask me about extending my car warranty one more time. And so, but what people do look at is your push notifications on your phone. Yeah, you might swipe them away, but you're at least getting visibility into them and getting their eyes on it. So I like it because it gets people communicating faster. In fact, I see success rates between members. The ones that are most engaged are usually the ones that are then downloading the app and using the push notifications. So that's probably my favorite go-to feature.
Love that.
What's yours?
Ooh. I like how in the event prof community, there's different tabs for different tasks. So if I need help, there's a page where I can go ask for help. If I just want to post a general question that I'm thinking about, I go to a space for that. And so it's really easy for me to navigate. And I think that's the key to a good implementation is starting really small with like 4 or 5 really cool pieces of content, 4 or 5 really cool features, and then build once the momentum gets going inside of there. So I think having a really clean interface and knowing almost instinctively like where to go because it's laid out so simply is probably my favorite feature. It's not hard for me to navigate in that community where there are others that I've pretty much abandoned because I'm like, I don't know where to post this.
And that
so
was like an
won't.
upgrade we made from the first platform to the second one. Like we were starting off, we ended up being at cap at our first platform at like 900 free members, and now we're about 100 paid members. I will say that I think the conversations are better because they can happen in organized groups. And I find that everyone says that they feel like they're not missing out on as much because it's not just one gigantic feed, which I think can be a struggle sometimes.
I agree. All right, so we've talked a little hypothetically about building this. How do we do it? Where should we start? But who does it? So when we think about association space or even corporations for that most, you have education departments, you have marketing, events, IT, maybe a membership department or a customer activation department. All of those people have some kind of role inside of a community, especially the event to 365 concept. So who's responsible for managing the community?
Well, the easy answer is everybody is, but what I found in my experience is that this is gonna tie in so many stakeholders within the company that it should become definitely like a large scale company initiative. But for a while, like I think what's gonna end up happening is that we're sitting obviously at an event conference, so a lot of event managers are gonna become those initial community managers when they push this concept. But what I think really needs to happen is that you need a dedicated community manager for this. And I can say this from experience because even me, who has started to get a lot more time to be able to put into this, it is very helpful to have someone whose sole desire is to make sure the community is happy. And what I mean by that, somebody who can do things like do onboarding calls and call new members, somebody who can post content regularly. And what I think is gonna happen in the future is that as social media starts to have harder and harder time being effective, is that the social media managers of companies are gonna become the new community managers for a lot of these communities, I think, in a lot of ways.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, different skill sets, but I think it's applicable.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some leveling up that will have to happen at that point, you know.
Sure.
And that's what's interesting about a community manager is like, they gotta be an event manager. They do need to be like an IT person that helps tech people figure things out. They do need to also know how to post right and write well and things like that. They do need customer service skills. It's a very multifaceted tool, but I think when you have that dedicated person, you'll end up having more dedicated effort into the community.
I agree. We did have a great question come in from Dia Gill. What if all these initiatives don't attract the desired engagement? How do you retain the few that engaged? It's a great question, and I would throw it back and say, well, engagement means a lot of things to a lot of different people, kind of like the word hybrid. Hybrid means a lot of things to a lot of different people. There's a lot of different ways to approach engagement. So I think it just depends on when you think about starting your community, and this is, I will say this so I'm blue in the face with everything, but you have to start with your why. Why are you doing it in the first place? Because then you can measure the engagement and you can say, it did work, it didn't work. But if you don't even know why you're doing it in the first place, it's super hard to measure what that engagement looks like. And that will then dictate what success looks like for you. So for D, I would say, what if the initiatives don't track the desired engagement? Well, maybe that engagement is just views. Maybe that's your whole goal. You want a place where people can go view all of the content, and you don't care if they're liking or commenting or sharing any of it. You just want eyeballs on it. That's an engagement that some people would say, it didn't work for me. That didn't hit the mark. But other groups would say that's exactly what we wanted this community to do. And so I think it's just a matter of also bringing your community members into the conversation and asking them what they want. Because once they feel heard and validated, they're much more likely to keep participating and those initiatives will land. And I think you'll keep engaged. I also like the approach of quality over quantity. I
Yes.
would rather have a small group of very, very engaged community members than 900 people in there not saying anything.
Yeah, you probably felt that because you were part of the first platform we had when it was free. And by the way, like Megan doesn't work for me in any sort of way, so she can like totally talk crap about the platform all she wants. So this is definitely an honest opinion on here, but I felt the same thing too, that like when we had 900 members, it didn't feel like it was it didn't feel like it was active. It felt like weird. It wasn't there. But now like we're a smaller group, but way more high actively engaged. So I definitely would go quality over quantity in the beginning. To tag on to the question about the engagement piece, I think a lot of times too, it's picking a platform that actually measures the right engagement. And that was another problem with why when we chose an event app, it didn't tell us really. It's just not telling us like how many people are actually just viewing posts. Because the event platform doesn't really care as much about that. It cares about maybe how many comments you've gotten, how many hours people have watched the content and things like that. But like, I wanna know like what percentage of people are logging in once a week. And so I think when you choose a good community platform, it will show you the right data, and you'll find that, and I think this is a proven community management statistic, that like a majority of people who even pay and join your community are gonna be lurkers. And so I think a lot of times, I at least got like kind of sad when I was like, why are people posting, you know? But then you meet people and they're like, I love the community, it's amazing. And I'm like, but I like never see you post anything. And they're like, yeah, I'm just a little shy, but I get so much value from it. And that's something you wouldn't really know unless you had that login analytics and that sort of stuff.
I think that just goes back to like the commitment curve. So we can dive into community theory all day long if you want to. But talking about the commitment curve, like not every single person in your community can be that evangelist level who's out there standing on top of a mountain, shouting how great it is and commenting and posting every single day, every hour. As soon as a new one comes in, they're there. You can't have a community of all just evangelists. You have to have the lurkers to make a true ecosystem. Like think about ecosystems in the wild. Not everyone can be a great white shark. Not everyone can be a lion. The lion has to eat. Those people have to eat. So it takes the lurkers and the evangelists to truly make that ecosystem happen. And I think you have to experiment. So the advice I would give for Dia about how do you retain it and what if the initiatives don't work? Try something different. See what does. Like you're never going to get it right 100% of the time. And experimentation is what makes communities thrive because you're trying different things. You're asking the members, what do we miss the mark on? Like that's one of the things I loved when Will was switching platforms with EventProf community is he came to the community and said, hey, we're going to switch platforms. This was not really working for me. Here's why it's not working. What do you guys want to see out of our next platform? And so we then all got to share in of what we wanted out of the community. And I think that's why a lot of people ended up paying and going to the paid version of it was because they're like, wow, I got to help build this. It's not, I just joined it. I'm not just a member. I literally got to help say what features were important to me so that I could show up for the community.
Number one feature, longer character limit on posts.
Oh my gosh, yes. The first platform, I think it was less than Twitter. It was yes. And I'm a long-winded typer, and I finally was just like, I'm never posting again.
You only do like 5 or 6 comments where you have like a 7-part comment before you're like, yeah, let's look at something different.
It was rough. I think I said, many slacks of like, I literally hate this character limit, and I'm not posting anything ever again until
the best part about making yourself visible as that community manager is that people just DM you feedback and be like, I love this all, but why is there a character limit? And I'm like, oh, I'm just so sorry. I'm working on trying to get it fixed. All right, where do we go next?
Okay, Tom put in
How's everybody doing? Pulse check. Everybody's hands up and feeling good? All right, good.
Got some knowledge bombs going on.
In the chat, they're putting down exclamation points.
Here we go. All right, Tom posted, what's the key driver to validating that a community is a must-have versus a nice-to-have? So thinking from a company perspective. So say you go to your boss and you say, I really think we should do this event to community concept. It'd be really great for membership, a new marketing channel. And the boss goes, why? Why do we need that? And how do you pitch that to him to say, we have to have this?
Ooh. This is a good question. So
Great question.
I think it comes very naturally that it feels like a must-have. So for example, if you're doing lots of social media and external content, things like that, it's gonna feel like a must-have because you're gonna start to see your engagement rates on social media go down, and you're gonna need to figure out a new way to reach your audience. So that was, for me, what it felt like a lot at Endless, was that like we were just starting to see that it was getting harder and harder, more effort, more posts, higher quality, like basically it felt like just the effort was getting harder and harder as time went on. So it felt like a must-have because I was like, I just can't sustain dropping tons of money into ads, tons of money into boosting posts, hours and hours to post at one TikTok video, right? Like I wanted to figure out a way to very much do less work and work smarter, not harder. Yep. So that's where it felt like a must-have for me. I think also,
so let's say their boss is not as open to this concept as maybe you were as CEO of Endless. Like, how do they convince them of that?
The boss question.
Yes.
Well, one thing I would look at is I would look within your space to see if there's already communities already existing. I think that's one place I would look because if someone in your space is doing it, you're going to have a really easy case study to say, like, if we don't do it, they're going to become the community that everyone joins. But what I actually recommend is actually look externally and pull upon their experience. Ask them, like, are you part of any communities right now? And they're going to talk about how, at minimum, they're going to say, yeah, I go to like this country club and I put thousands of dollars into it just so I can connect and meet people and things like that. And I think that's going to be like your chance to really be like, well, I'm building that, but for our audience to already exist on. And then it will click in a lot of ways. So I would pull upon that experience. But the great thing is that like, it's proven that community works. Like this is like, I almost wouldn't rely on me trying to try really hard to explain because there's probably case studies. There's so much information on there that proves that community helps sell more, helps market more, that helps do so much more. So I think that we really, I'm talking so fast, I broke Interpify. I think that I would look for those case studies on the internet and you leverage those as much as possible too. Because like, let's be honest, you're probably also very busy too. And unless you're a really great seller, which I feel like I'm a persuasive person, I could probably persuade someone without a case study. But if you need to show them the facts and the data and they're more analytical, I'd find those case studies on there too.
I would agree. And I would also add in like putting in the timeline of what the expectation of building, because building a community takes time. I mean, you're asking to change human behavior. There's probably 3,000 books on there of like how hard it is to start consistently going to the gym. And that's like the basic need for us to survive. And yet we still struggle to change our behavior, go to the gym and eat better. So how do you expect them to then change the behavior? So it takes a long time, which I think is why some people shy away from community building, because I'm going to put a huge investment in this and not see a return for potentially 12 to 18 months. And so for some CEOs, that can be really scary. So lay out, here's all the things we're going to be doing. Here's what we're already doing. We're just going to do it inside the community instead of on social media. We're already doing these things. Now it just happens in the community and not outside of it. And so I think having clear expectations of, here's the roadmap. This is how long I anticipate it happening. And here's all the things that we're doing. So we're not adding to our plate. We're just moving the plate. And so I think that then helps frame the conversation with case studies and data around it, where they can then have a clear vision and be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense to me. I'm willing to make this 18-month investment to build it. And that's where the event piece comes in, because as we all know, events are the catalyst to connection. How many conferences have we gone to and had amazing hallway conversations and then nothing happens?
Oh my gosh.
And so using those events to then keep springboarding back into the community where people are reinvesting, re-engaging, and then you can show the metrics and data to the CEO and be like, see, it's working. The roadmap is happening. We're going there. We're on the right path and it's going to pay itself. And just being honest and honestly transparent and having those regular updates then turns it into we must have this in the future. We have to keep doing this, not, oh, well, it didn't work for 5 months, so abandon all cause.
Abandon all ye hope.
Exactly. Exactly.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for the questions. By the way, we got about like 8 minutes left. So if you want to get questions in, start submitting them now because you're going to miss your chance.
For sure. Well, you can always find us after too. No. And join EventProf community.
Yes, you can ask a question on EventProf community. No, it was funny. Julius yesterday said, don't come and find me afterwards. I'm not going to answer your questions. So ask them now.
I love that. I'm definitely stealing that.
Now.
All right, so last couple questions on EventProf, when going back to who actually does this. So we said it was a team of people, your A team, need a community manager. I agree with that. So one thing you did really uniquely in EventProf community that I think is a good model, and this kind of then plays into the conversation about do volunteers have a role in managing community? God. You have like a manager's advisory board for EventProf community.
Yeah. So
what is their role in the maintenance and running of the day-to-day of EventProf?
yeah, so right now, so I have strong opinions on volunteering because I've had association scarring from when I get asked to be a president of a chapter and you end up like it becomes a full-time job, and then you'd feel like you really didn't get much out of it.
And then COVID hits while you're president and everything changes.
That also really sucks too. So like I have a lot of strong feelings towards like making volunteers be the backbone of what keeps your community functioning. So what I recommend for people is don't make it where the community lives and dies off your volunteers, because that's like the rented land, owned land thing. You're basically having to like squeeze the sweat out of your community members, and that's how you create burnout. That's how you create people who end up leaving communities, I think, in a lot of ways. But
I also think, though, just a caveat to that, my one opposition to it is I think community can create micro volunteer opportunities.
yes.
And what I mean by that is most volunteer roles, especially if you end up becoming president, like when I was president of PCMA Rocky Mountain chapter, I had been volunteering on the board or in some capacity with that organization for over a decade. For 10 years, I was giving time. And I finally just said, like, I can't make any 3-year-long commitments to volunteer anymore. Like, I'm too busy. I got it. I want to be involved. I want to help. I want to volunteer. I can't give you 3 years of my life after I've already given you 10. But if I could run the community for a week or be the moderator for a month or be responsible of creating some fun content that I can post in there every couple weeks or something. Those are all things that keep me engaged in the association with the company that I'm more than happy to do. And I don't have to commit 3 years of my life to do it and then get on committee calls. I know I have a very clear start and end date, and that then helps get them more invested in the community, gets them more invested in your organization so that membership dues keep coming in. They're getting more engaged. They might start bringing their friends in. So I think there is a place for volunteers, but them actually running the day-to-day operations of community, I agree, is not the right place.
Yeah, if your community growth is dependent on volunteers, your community is not sustainable. But I love the micro example. Like we did something where like, hey, we picked a couple people that were really active and we said, hey, do you just want to be a moderator of one section? They're like, yeah, sure. Like, what do I have to do? I'm like, if anyone does anything crazy, just, you're going to like hide their post and we can discuss it and see if we need to make any actions, things like that. Just someone to be an eye and be a catalyst for engagement. And I like whether that they do their moderating job or not, the community is going to still survive and still do great. And in fact, we don't really need moderators because like we don't have spam, we don't have any issues at all. But it's nice to kind of almost also reward some of those people to say like, hey, here's a little bit of power because it's going to just help you as an evangelist grow into that. But yeah, like if they're touching revenue, if they're responsible for helping get people to go to events or things like that, I would definitely avoid that as much as possible.
I agree. So let's talk a little bit about your advisory council for EventProf.
Yeah, the founding members.
Yeah. How'd that come to be? What is their role? Where did they play into the community space?
So yeah, I learned one of the best things you can do when you're building a community is to invite what I call founding members. And I think this is what most people call them. And it's this idea that these are the people who can help you steer your community in the right way. So what I did is, and this is the great part I think about building community, you kind of know who your small core set of group of people are who are like really, really engaged. They've been going to every conference. They absolutely love you guys. They're reposting about you on social. Invite those people and say, hey, why don't you become a founding member? Get them in and take their feedback when you're building it to say, what do you think about the branding here? What do you like about this? What do you not like about this? And make changes before you open it up to a larger audience. And then what I did is I give people tags. So really next to your name, it says founding member. So it's like, it's kind of swaggy to like say like, yeah, I helped this community get founded. And they keep it forever. They don't pay extra for it or anything like that because they helped us in those beginning years. And I'll tell you, it's so great to have that too because they also build that initial buzz. Have you ever like showed up at a party and the music's turned down low and no one's there yet? Isn't it like
Every
the most
networking
awkward?
event ever?
Yeah, the worst networking event ever. My biggest fear, the reason why we all show up 20 minutes late to the party is that we don't want to be the first one there. Get the founding members in who are super excited, prompt them with questions, individually ask them, say, hey, can you post something? So then once the first person comes in that pays or is coming from your event, they log in, the party's already started. Fun fact, this is not related to community at all, but I don't know if on another chance in my life I'll get to share this. When I used to do the DJ company with the big production events for high school dances, I didn't want high school dances to have that awkward like beginning part we're talking about. So what I would do is I would make them all wait out lot and outside. People want to go to the club that has a long line that took forever to get into. So I literally hold doors until there was like 100, 200 people. And then I would tell the school dance people, I'd be like, all right, let them in. And they'd come in and it was like a club just lit up and the energy bang was like, boom. You got to do that same thing for your community. And I think founding members is how you do that.
Love that example.
I don't think I'll ever get to share it anywhere else.
Exists, right? Like that's literally how the word FOMO was created. And that's a marketing a tool that you can use, creating FOMO, bringing them in and giving some sneak peeks. And then maybe if you're an association, maybe the community is a member-only benefit, but everyone can see some sort of preview of what's in the community and being like, look at these awesome conversations that I'm not a part of because I'm not a member. So you create those FOMO moments. I love that. All right, we have one question in here from Ashley. It's a good one.
Okay.
You run and speak on a lot of podcasts. So the question is, are podcasts an efficient tool for building community pre-event?
Oh yeah, totally. Like that's what's crazy, I think, and why I also saw this aligned is that like all this content I was creating was naturally creating a community. Curious, how many people listen to one of my podcasts, Event Icons, Event Brew, Event Tech podcast? Oh, well, now you're going to after this for sure. But I promise you that there's a bunch of people here who have, and they might not even be part of this community yet, but they are a community too. They all understand the inside jokes about how Nick Borelli and I, what we drink, right? They know the inside jokes about how Brant and I give each other adjectives. They're all part of that community. But the problem is that that's that audience way. So the second that you can then give them the space to talk about things is when it starts bouncing off of each other and becoming that community. So yes, since I think we're getting
I agree,
slow on
and I
time.
think even going back to our topic of getting experiential with it, maybe you record the podcast live inside of the community so that people can be asking questions while you're having the conversation, you're recording it.
Yeah.
That's an easy thing to do. Get people involved, shake it up, get more engagement and conversation from the podcast. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can leverage podcast content to build community and also build incentives to come to events. Because I love the inside jokes. I mean, how many podcasts do I listen to where like halfway through, I'm like, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore because I'm not part of this podcast community. And so the inside jokes, I'm like, all right, geography joke had to be there.
Yeah, definitely.
So great question, Ashley. All right, final thoughts as we're wrapping up today. If you had one tip to give to anyone in our audience that is starting the Event at 365 concept, what would it be?
I would say unless someone is doing exactly what you want to do, you got to start the community and just try to get it started. That was probably the biggest thing is that it's just going to take time as you build these things. You're going to have to go to a lot of conferences and meet people and invite them to come join your community. And this stuff just takes a little bit of time. And I wish I had started this years ago because I think it would also helped me foster better connections as well. Because I feel like the relationships I have with my community members now are stronger than I've ever had with just my audience members ever before.
I would agree. And it goes back to the quantity versus quality conversation we had earlier. For me, if I had one tip, one piece of advice to walk away with is just try it. Like jump into the deep end, get experiential, try all different kinds of things. Because if members are leaving your organization or customers are leaving, they're not seeing the value. So how do you create that value? Give them something, make them a part of it, and try different stuff. Ask them. If you're not asking, they're not going to tell you. Like very few people are voluntarily going to walk up and be like, I think you should have a community and I should be a part of it. No one's going to say that to you. So ask them, like, we're going to start a community. What do you want out of it? And then try different stuff. Keep it exciting. Facebook does it all the time. It's the never-ending algorithm changes, and they do it on purpose so that every time you come back, it's a new experience. It's a new thing. It's no different with community building. Just try different stuff and ask people. Bring them in. There's only one way to find out if it's going to work. You have to start.
So true.
All right.
Oh, wow. You guys, look how much stuff we covered. I have to come over here with how much we covered. So yeah, to kind of sum it all up and close this all out, if you want to see this in action, scan this QR code. You can apply to join the community and see if it's something that you want to learn from. The reason why I built the Event Pros community was to show people how this can be done the right way. So, we talked a lot about tactical things, but if you want to see this in action and get inspiration, that's literally why I built this. So scan this QR code. I'll make it even bigger too for you all. And come join our community. We'd love to see you there. And if you ever have any questions, yeah, that's right. He wants to scan the QR code.
Sorry, I'm getting out of the way.
So come join us. Come see what it's all about. And we talk about this stuff all the time too. So I'm also sharing content inside there that expands on a lot of this stuff. But we'll be around to answer any questions. Probably Megan more than me because I get ready for the next session. But
and I won't be Julius. I will answer your questions. So please come
Megan will
find
answer your
me.
questions. So
Julius can hold court outside again.
So come join us. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, we love for you to implement this. So the best thing you can do is take one nugget you learned today and implement and go out there. Normally this is when I come up as the MC and I tell everyone to make some noise for the speakers that were here. But this time I'm gonna do it for Megan.
Make some noise for
Megan. Thank you guys so much for coming to our talk. I'm Will Curran.
Megan Martin.
Find us on the interwebs and come join us on the community.
Thanks
everybody.
everyone.